So what's up everybody? Today we're back over here at the CP6000 working on our octo snail part. Now if you caught the first video, we did all of our roughing using 3-axis motion and then some polar interpolation. But today we're going to get into all of our 3+2 stuff. So this is the state that we left the part in at the end of our last video. And you'll see that we still have all these pockets underneath the port that we have. We still have to get underneath our flange. We have to get deep into these pockets here, and that's what we're gonna do today. So I'm gonna show you exactly how we did it. Now before you guys start telling me how terrible this tool sounds, keep in mind that it's sticking out 8 times diameter, and then it's in a 7-inch long shrink fit holder. Add to that, we're going to be cutting with the center of the ball, and that's just the way this thing is going to sound. There's no way around it. Now in the first video, I talked a little bit about why you want to use primarily 3-axis motion on a 5-axis machine. Most 5-axis machines are going to be more rigid in the 3-axis orientations. And so today, as we start our 3+2, just to explain a little bit about what that means, it means we're going to be roughing still in 3-axis mode, but we're going to use our 2 rotary axes for positioning. Now on Mastercam, 3+2 programming is super simple, but the first thing you're going to need is a plane that orients your spindle direction to your part. So I want to be split perfectly between these two ribs here, and I want my Z-axis to come in perpendicular to the back wall and parallel to the bottom floor. So in order to get that location, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I'm in 3D sketch mode, and I'm going to draw a line from this point to this point. So now I have a line with a midpoint that I can use to find the center of that pocket. So we're going to switch over now to 2D sketch mode. Look at our part from the top, and I'm going to simply draw a line from my origin to the center of that line I just sketched. So now I have a vector that I can use to create my new plane. To create my new plane, I just go into my planes, select a dynamic plane, snap to my origin, and then I can use these little bars here to align my Z-axis to that new line I just drew. Now I prefer to always have my X going in the direction that X is actually going on the machine, but that's not 100% required. So there you see we have our new plane, and now what we would do is create a tool path using our top plane as our WCS, and then for our tool plane we'll use this new plane we just created. So if we open up this tool path here where we're starting to rough out this pocket using OptiRough, you can see what we have in our plane designations here. Top, side pocket 1, side pocket 1. So now the machine knows that we actually have to use both our B axis and our C axis to arrive at a combination that's going to allow us to get into that pocket. Now we can look at the geometry that I use to control this tool path, and for our machining surfaces I just have the entire part and no avoidance surfaces. So how do I control where the tool path is going to actually go? I don't want it coming out here. I just want it to stay inside the one pocket that I'm focusing on. So we do that using our tool path control. So under tool path control we have a boundary chain, and for my boundary chain you can see I just sketched a nice closed loop that's going to tell my software that you have to stay inside here. So that gets rid of all the motion that may have caused the tool to go too far in and my holder to hit the part. So we're only looking right in here in this pocket. Now we're going to do that exact same thing for every additional pocket and get as much of that material removed as we can. And this is one of the things that I really love about the Harvey 1 TE end mill, is that we're able to get into these pockets with an aggressive ramp strategy, and we're able to remove all that material really quick. So now that we have all of our pockets roughed out, there's some other things that we're going to have to get into here that are really going to be difficult to get to without colliding with our part. So if you take a look underneath our flange here, we have to get all the way down under there, and we have to make sure that we don't damage this front flange of our part. We're also going to have to get down in here, down underneath this flange, and we're still going to have to do some more roughing down in here, and we're going to have to be careful that we don't collide with our bottom floor here. So the very next thing I'm going to do is another OptiRest path, just like we did on the original pockets, and we're going to let it remove as much material as it possibly can before we have to start really changing our angles and struggling to get to some of these locations. And you'll notice the first thing that I did was come in perpendicular to this back wall. Now for this next tool path, we came in at this angle and got everything we could underneath. All right, so now we have our part in this state here, and we've roughed out all this material using a bull end mill, so there's still quite a bit of material left in some spots here that I don't want to leave for the finishing. So you may see this 1/2 inch, 3 inch long ball end mill that we're using, and it's sticking out a mile. So it's not going to sound that great. We're going to be cutting on the center of our ball, and you know, the holder's not very big in diameter. It's just not a very rigid tool overall, but we have to have it that way for the reach that we get. Because if you take a look at our part here, we don't just have to worry about colliding with our part. As our head tilts from vertical to horizontal, now we have to be concerned about our chuck hitting the front of our spindle face. So if you take a look here, I know that the back of my tool is where my spindle is. So I don't ever want to see this go past my chuck, because there can be trouble then, and we don't want another crash video. Oh. So you can see there, we're good, no collision, everything's gonna be fine. But we also have to make sure that we're not gouging our bottom floor right now. So what I did in a previous operation is I came in and I actually took that floor to where there's only 2 thousandths of stock left on it. That gives me clearance for my tools to be able to plunge in there without rubbing on the floor and damaging my part. Now in this same group of tool paths, I did end up having to use one full 5-axis tool path, and that's to get up underneath our flange without colliding with our port. So what I did is I used the curved 5-axis tool path, and all I have is a sketch underneath my flange that mimics what you see here tool path wise in the blue. It's just one semicircle, and we're driving our axis control using this outside cylindrical surface as my tool axis control face. And using that surface, I told it to maintain a 25-degree lead angle. Now the reason that I did this is very important. This ball end mill has 6 flutes. At 15 degrees, you're not engaging all your flutes in the cut. You have to be at least 22 degrees to have all of your tool engaged. So we went a little bit extra and we went 25 degrees. And if we backplot this tool path, you'll see exactly how it's working. Our tool plunges in, maintains a 25-degree angle to the surface it's cutting, and then it retracts to avoid our port. Now, that leaves me with this section right here in between. And how on earth am I going to get to that? Because I can't come at it from this way, and I can't come at it from an upward angle. So the only way that I can get to this radius under here is to use another 5-axis curved tool path, and this time we're going to just kind of stab at half of what's left over in there. Then we're going to come from the other side and do the exact same thing. And you can see that this part has a ton of clearance issues. I mean, as this is plunging in, look how close it's getting to the top of our snail there. All right, so with those 2 5-axis curved tool paths, we took it to this state. Now, as I look at the part, I'm trying to see where there's still big chunks of stock left, because for all the operations after this video, I want to start finishing. So I can see here that I got a pretty good chunk left over underneath my flange. I got as far down as I could reach with my 3/4 end mill. I know I have a big chunk of material left in here, and I'd also like to get rid of some of the stuff that's in here, because some of that is about a 1/2 inch thick still. So up next, we're going to come back in with our 1/2 inch ball. And this time we're going to get as far down in here as we can without colliding with any of our other pieces of the part. And one of the things that I really love about using Mastercam's OptiRough tool paths is that you're not wasting a ton of time cutting air. Using stock models and then using OptiRough, the software can see exactly where there's still stock left and only focus on those areas, rather than coming in and plunging and trying to cut all over creation where there's no material left anyway. All right, after this tool path, now we're going to get into some stuff that's pretty hairy, because the only way I can get rid of some of this material down under here is to come in at a very steep angle, and I'm going to have all kinds of obstacles here. I got to do this without hitting this rib, without hitting this port, and without hitting our top flange, but I need to be able to get all the way down under there, and that's almost impossible, but we managed. We're coming in with our Harvey 1TE again. And you can see all these opportunities that we have to destroy our part right now. As we get deeper and deeper, our shank of the tool is getting very close to this rib, and as we get deeper, our holder starts to get close to that rib. Now the last thing that I want here is a scrap part, so I have to be very careful and make sure that I simulate every operation and verify every tool path to make sure that I'm not getting any gouges, whether from my tool or from my holder. After that, we're going to change our angle a little bit, and we're going to come into that same area with the same tool and get some of the things that we couldn't reach from the other angle. Even though the angles are slightly different, you'll see that Mastercam can still see there's a whole lot of extra material in here against this back wall. All right, so next, I'd really like to get down in here and start clearing out some of this junk. But I'm concerned that if I do that, I'm going to be plunging into some of this excess stock that's left on top of our snail here. So as the tool comes in, it could be clipping what's on top here. So before I get into machining away all of this stock, I'm going to come in and just do a semi-finish pass to get rid of some of this stuff on the top of the snail. Now for this, I decided to use an equal scallop tool path. Again, constraining it using a containment boundary that I sketched around this area here. And I'm gonna be using a tapered ball end mill this time because that tool is gonna be a lot more rigid than that 1/2-inch ball that we have sticking out a mile. So you see we start in the middle with a nice lead in, and then we work our way outward until we have that whole surface semi-finished. And then we come in and do the same thing a little bit over to the right. Now once we have that material cleared out, I feel a lot safer about letting our next tool plunge into this pocket here. So you can see we took a couple passes there so that we can get rid of any of the stock that's left on the snail that our equal scallop toolpath didn't get. And now we're working our way into that area that's really difficult to reach, but it looks like Mastercam's doing a fine job. Now you notice to get that stuff out of there, we came in again at a horizontal angle, but now I need to tilt it up a little bit to be able to get some of the stuff that's a little bit deeper. So we're gonna do the exact same thing using the exact same tool, but again, we're gonna have some collision avoidance issues here. So you can see as we're getting deeper and deeper, again, we're watching our holder to make sure that we're not gouging the face of our port because we're gonna get awful close to it. Tool paths like this is where steep shallow really comes in handy. By setting our steep shallow properly, we ensure that we stop short of when our holder is actually gonna hit our part. All right, now that we got that area cleared out, there's only one more spot where I really know there's a ton of excess material left, and that's inside here. So for our final tool path, we're gonna come in with another opti rest. So looking at this tool path, you can see how my spindle orientation is looking at these yellow lines. So we're coming in at this angle, and then we're gonna rough out everything that we can reach in there. By coming in at this angle, I'm making sure that my spindle face isn't gonna be down here hitting my chuck. A lot of times you'll find that just by putting maybe a 10 or 15 degree tilt, you'll be able to avoid all different kinds of collision problems. And boom, just like that, we have our part in a fully roughed state, ready for us to start doing some semi-finishing and finishing. So everywhere that had a big chunk of material now is within 50 thou or so of the finished part. And I wanted to mention, you know, throughout my career, I've heard a lot of people talk about how 5-axis work is some of the most complicated stuff on the planet. But you can see what we did here is all we had to do was rotate our planes around and then just create tool path like we normally would on a simple 3-axis machine. So don't be intimidated with 3+2 or full 5-axis work, because what it really does is open up a whole new world of machining freedom for you. Where a part like this would have taken maybe 60 operations on a 3-axis mill, we're able to do it here all in just one. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Make sure that you catch the final video on this part where we start getting into the finishing, because there's gonna be some super cool 5-axis motion and some more little tips and tricks that we have to teach you. So please like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys again next time.